Hello everyone, and welcome to Art Lesson 3. In today's video, we will be going over how to draw from a photo reference. This is one of the pictures I took when I did the video on how to set up a still life, and if you'd like to draw along with this same picture, the link to that is in the description. So how I usually begin is with the photo itself. I like to mark the very outer edges of the object that I'm drawing. So I've marked the very top of the pepper, the very bottom of it, and now I am marking the very furthest sides. So I want to make sure I'm getting the very outer edges of it. None of the object extends past where I've marked. And then I connect all the lines together to create a box around the pepper. The shadow shapes do extend past the edges of this a little bit. I'm not going to worry about them too much right now. They don't extend past very far. But once I have this box around the pepper, I really just want to make sure that the entirety of the pepper is inside the box, so I know the dimensions of the object that I'm drawing. Once that is done, I can measure the height against the width. And I'm obviously not using a very precise method. I'm kind of eyeballing it, just trying to get the vague measurements. And I can see that the shape is just a little bit longer than it is wide, which kind of surprised me. If I had just looked at it, I would have said that the pepper was pretty long. So it was a good thing that we checked. So now I can come over to my paper and start putting in the limits that I want, these kind of outer edges of this box as well. And I want to make sure that I'm marking the width first. Since I do know that the width is less than the height, I know it's going to fit on my paper now. If I had marked the height first, there's a chance that it could go off the edges for the width. So I'm getting the width versus the height, making sure that my height is a little bit taller than the width. And again, very much just eyeballing this. You are very welcome to get a ruler or just another piece of paper or whatever you want to make these measurements a little bit more precise. I'm kind of just going for it. And for my method of drawing, I kind of change along the way if I find out that I've messed it up. If I were drawing something that I wanted to look exact, like my reference, like somebody's face or something, I would probably get out a ruler. I'd spend a lot more time on this setup, but since it's just a pepper, I know that it's okay if it doesn't turn out exactly like my photo reference. So once I have the box on my paper, then I'm going to come back to my reference photo and find the midpoint of that box. Again, eyeballing it, you're welcome to measure if you want. And then I'll turn it on its side and find that next halfway point. This is just kind of divvying up the shape, so I can break down the shape into kind of some smaller pieces and to have some different lines that I can reference as I'm drawing to make sure I'm copying it closer to the photo. So then I come over to my drawing and I put down those same halfway lines. All of this process, it seems kind of long to start out with putting all these extra lines on the paper, but I find it really helps me place my picture where I want it to be. I find that if students just kind of dive right in and they don't do some of this pre-work, they may kind of draw a teeny tiny pepper in like the corner of the page, or they'll start drawing it really big and it'll grow off of the page, and it's kind of hard to compose it on your paper where you want it to be. So I've now started kind of blocking in some of the basic shapes of the pepper. I can see it touches the edge of the box at the very top, right about that midpoint. So I've marked that, and now I'm trying to find the angle of the one edge to the other side. And so I'm dragging my pencil back and forth across the pages, trying to match that angle as much as I can. This definitely is an easier thing to do when you are working from a photo reference instead of like drawing from life, because you can just drag your pencil across. So I found the next place that the pepper touches the edge, and it's just below the midpoint. So I've marked that, and now I'm trying to simplify that curve in between the 2 points into just 2 different lines that I can measure the angle of. It's a little bit harder to measure the angles of a curved line, so I generally simplify my shape into more straight lines and geometric lines so I can kind of rough in those angles. Now I've come to the bottom. That outer edge of the stem is right about the midpoint of that bottom quadrant. And right now I'm not worried about kind of that negative space, how that pepper curves in and then back out with the stem. I'm just finding the angle between the 2 points. Really just trying to get the rough idea of the pepper right now. And that point is a little bit above the midway point. So I'll mark that and then find the angle once again. And all of this, it is just kind of rough. It's kind of guessing. I'm trying to draw pretty light. I'm drawing a little bit darker for the video, so it shows up better. But on my own, I'd be drawing pretty light because I know these are all guidelines that will get erased. I'm marking, it's kind of hard to see because it's so dark in the shadow there, but where the pepper kind of has that bend, it's a little bit above the midway point again. Then that outer edge of the pepper kind of follows the midline, just kind of next to it, and then finding that angle. So this whole process is really what artists mean when they say to work general to specific. I'm getting this really vague outline. The picture doesn't look like a pepper right now, but it's helping me know where to place things. So now I can come in and kind of start chiseling out the shape a little bit more and getting a little bit more specific. Where I started out super general, I started out with a square, and now I'm slowly chipping away bit by bit to the shape that I want. And you'll notice too, I'm holding my pencil on its side. I'm holding my pencil pretty loose. I don't want to be holding my pencil like you would when you write, because that's generally what you use for more like detailed things when you want a lot of control. And right now, if I hold my pencil that way, I'll start getting too finicky. I'll get in there and I'll want to start doing all these like fine little details, which right now I still want to be working pretty generally, pretty big, vague shapes as I slowly hone in on what I want. Because I'm sure if you guys have been drawing for any period of time, you've come across the frustration of drawing a face, and you draw one eye and it just is perfect, and you go to draw the next eye and it doesn't work out the same. That's a perfect example of working too specific too quickly. If you work in more general lines, you can help avoid some of that problem by getting where you want everything to be and slowly working up to it, instead of going perfectly detailed in one area and trying to bring everything else up to that level. So here I've blocked in the stem. I've tried looking at the different lines around it to try to figure out where that placement goes exactly. And I'm just continuing this process of making the shapes more specific and just a little bit more detailed. We can actually see that this may be turning into a pepper right now. Now I'm slowly coming in. I've only been worried about this outside line, this outside contour. And now I'm coming in and trying to find some of these inner details. And I constantly have to fight the urge to just go for it and stop measuring and stop paying attention to the lines around it. And then that's when things can get really wonky. So I'm trying to stay aware of like this base of the stem. How far away is it from this midline that I drew? How far away is it from the edge? Am I Am I paying attention to that, or am I just putting it wherever I want? And so I'm kind of double checking, making sure it's looking relative to all those different other lines, and slowly correcting myself. Right now, I haven't been too worried about like erasing any lines because all of this is still pretty rough and vague. But if you find that your paper is getting too busy and too covered in lines, feel free to clean up some of those. And so now, since I know I'm going to be shading this picture later, I am also blocking in some of these shadow shapes. Kind of putting where these core shadows are. The shadow shapes are a little complicated on this pepper, so just getting kind of the ideas and putting in this highlight. Again, a pretty complex highlight, but just sort of blocking in where it's going to go. And so at this point, I am probably going to go in and clean up this line a little bit better. I'll do that in a time lapse because that may take a little while. And I'll put in the cast shadow pretty quick, and then go and clean it up. Some artists find at this point they're totally ready to start shading. Other people would want to clean it up a little bit more, so I will clean up this image. I'll kind of erase these other guidelines and stuff, and then finish up the video after I do that time lapse, and after I finish up this cast shadow. Now here we have our finished line drawing. As you can see, I've added in a lot of the interior details, and I've also changed a few things. In the photo, you can see that the pepper had this little growth right here, but I didn't want that in my drawing, so I didn't put it in. One of the dangers of drawing from a photo is getting caught up in copying what you see exactly, but just remember that you are the artist and you make the decisions, not the reference. If there's something you want to edit or change, you're free to do it. And that is it for today. Stay tuned for my next video that will be going over how to shade this picture. Thank you so much for watching, and have fun drawing.